I want to speak about something that, truth be told, I don't hear too many people talking about or speaking on. And y'all know on my channel, family, I like taking these FBA stories that ain't gaining proper traction and light and put them up under the magnifying glass so they can be put on full display into the public lexicon. And today we're going to be talking about a black farm down there in Georgia by the name of Tiffany's, whose property, was under attack by white supremacists. And, they reached out to law enforcement to try to get something done to the white supremacists to no avail, because typically what we find that, when it comes to us in black society, they turn a blind eye to those in law enforcement, because 9 times out of 10, they complicit in the practice of racism, white supremacy as well. Now this story happened a few months back, and I don't know if any charges were brought later on to the white supremacists, but I wouldn't count on it. White supremacist society, they all work in conjunction with one another, but this happened, a couple months back, but I still found it to be relevant because it shows, just how racism, white supremacy works, because truth be told, every time we as foundational black Americans try to get something started for ourselves, to empower ourselves, independent of, any white power structure, the white supremacists, work to undermine it, target it or tear it down altogether, historically on up until this day, and with this black farm, they're producing fresh food, to black communities, they cultivating communities, they doing for self, and this is, one of the key components in nation building, being able to cultivate your own food and do for self. So white supremacist society, don't like this no way, so they in white supremacist society say to themselves, we've done everything to destroy those blacks, and still they get up and still they build it. We can't stand it. Now this Tiffany's farm, it's ran by her and her father, I believe. And, basically what's going on is, the white supremacists is coming around, tearing up boundaries, fencing, that marks their, property line, of how many square miles their property line borders, they tearing up, the fencing around that, removing posts, trying to knock down trees, and, even setting fire on their property, which is a bunch of nonsense, because white supremacist society can't stand to see black success. So I got the audio and the video, and we're going to walk through and talk about this thing how we normally do, family. Fair use.
Hard for, a place that should feel safe, but instead they're being harassed by their white neighbors over and over again. There have been strange fires on their property, fires that don't just happen on their own. And when they tried to speak up, it only got worse. They called for help. They reached out to the authorities thinking someone would step in and do the right thing. But instead, they were met with silence, or worse, brushed off like their lives didn't matter. But they didn't back down. They caught them on camera, and now it's time for the world to see it too. This isn't just about one family. This is bigger. This is about how racism shows up in real life. Quiet sometimes, but dangerous.
On fire inside of our property line. You don't think we should dial 911? Huh? Yeah, let me call real quick. They set our property on fire. What sloppy work.
My daughter tried to get in contact with the forestry people and tell them how bad the situation was. And I had a feeling that they totally ignored her,
Yeah, they pretty much blew me.
Yeah, they totally ignored her because, what we typically see when it comes to law enforcement agencies, they complicit in the practice of racism, white supremacy as well, just like I said before. But let's continue.
Me off. They kind of like, when I said it's not just smoke, but it's flames by my fence. The guy that answered the phone, he just brushed it off. I thought that they would at least try to send somebody out here. The chief, for whatever reason, during the discussion about investigating this fire, he kept saying that, the one back here is black, right? He's an older black man. He's black. He might have said that like 4 times. And I'm trying to figure out, I'm sitting here talking to you about an investigation for arson.
See, family, if we foundational black Americans, had an equal playing field and we weren't suppressed and targeted, around, every corner left and right, we would have been, ran laps around, white people and, all of these non-FBA groups, we would have already had our, leg up. But what it is they know the spirit of resilience and, that fighting, that never say die attitude. The white supremacist society know that exists inside, FBA. So we've never, not been the focus of, all of their efforts, in order to, suppress us, marginalize us, and destroy foundational Black American society, altogether. But in spite of all of the oppression and injustice and the targeting that white supremacist society, throws at us, still we rise in FBA society. They can't keep us down, and they know that. But let's continue.
Arson. Now. Hi. Hi, Charlie. What are you doing over here?
I believe I'm on my property. I live at 368 Edie Creek Road.
Sister caught the white supremacist red-handed. He talking about he on his property, and upon me doing my little homework, research, and due diligence, he don't live nowhere in the area. So he over there trying to sabotage their efforts in building a black farm. You know what I mean? Because nothing, gets to a white supremacist more. Something they can't stand is, FBAs, doing for self and, doing better than what they feel in a white supremacist mindset that we should be doing, which is a bunch of nonsense. But let's continue.
Yeah, fence marks your property, right? My phone number is 678-967-9924. I moved your thing so I wouldn't run it over. I've not damaged anything. I've not gone over your fence.
Oh, wow.
Well, what?
He was sabotaging the fencing, trying to move the posting, maybe to take away less of their property, but let's continue.
Okay. Caught him red-handed. Look at him.
Red-handed. Red-handed.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Look at all them different white supremacists coming out there to get on code and sabotage our FBA families, Black Farm, which is a bunch of nonsense.
6,
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Now, I'm not totally sure, family, but I think that might be the same white supremacists coming out there, switching clothes, because in another video I watched, he tried to say he was out there turkey hunting or something. He out there sabotaging, just being dumb about it and don't know that, we see that he is the same person switching clothes, So this is just, white supremacy rearing its ugly head yet again, because like I said, in a white supremacist society, they can't stand to see Black folks doing good for themselves. This is why reparations need to be allocated as of yesterday to descendants of freedmen. And how we combat some of this stuff is, getting on code with our fellow FBA brother or sister and looking out for the lineage first and foremost. Just my thoughts on the matter, but, hopefully these white supremacists have gotten some charges, put on them. But I really wouldn't count on that, being as though we in a system of racism, white supremacy. You know how they all tend to work, look out for and work in conjunction with one another. Damn shame. Just my thoughts on the matter. But hopefully, this Black farm is thriving and doing well. And we should be really, supporting, our family when we see, them being targeted like this. We should support them even if they're not being targeted. But when they being targeted, you know, we should be, working to make sure that we, lining their pockets and supporting them, because it ain't nothing that, hurts white supremacy more than to see Black people on code working in conjunction with one another and circulating that Black dollar in the Black community. Just my thoughts on the matter. Peace.